What happens when one of Britain's most admired actors steps onto a morning talk show sofa expecting a warm chat, only to be ambushed by a host unwilling to show even the most basic courtesy? In just 43 seconds, a seemingly harmless introduction turns into one of the most painfully awkward moments in daytime television history. And all it takes is a single, pointed remark from Lorraine Kelly to send the entire segment veering off the rails. Colin Firth arrived at the studio that morning thinking it would be a straightforward promotional stop, nothing more than the usual round of interviews to support his new film. Lorraine's show had always been known for its friendly atmosphere, casual tone, and comforting morning TV charm. It felt like the perfect place to talk about the project. But the moment Colin settled onto the bright orange sofa, something felt off. The air was tighter than it should have been. Lorraine's expression wasn't hostile, but it carried a guarded edge that hinted she wasn't in the mood for her usual warmth. Seated beside her were two regulars, Ross King, the entertainment correspondent, and Christine Lampard, who often co-hosted. Both looked relaxed at first, unaware that the next few minutes would become the kind of clip producers would replay for years. Lorraine opened with a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Colin FTH, everyone. Lovely to have you here. Finally." That final word landed like a dart. Finally, as if Colin had spent years dodging her invitations or behaving as though her show wasn't worth his time. Colin, ever composed, adjusted slightly in his seat. "Thank you for having me, Lorraine. Happy to be here." "Are you, though?" she shot back instantly, her smile sharpening. "Because your people made it quite clear for a long time that you weren't interested in coming on this show." Ross King jumped in, trying to keep things light. "Well, he's here now, and that's what matters. Colin, why don't you tell us about the new film?" But Lorraine wasn't done. She leaned forward, cutting Ross off without even acknowledging him. "I'm just curious, Colin. What changed your mind? Did your film not attract enough interest from the bigger shows?" A silence fell over the room. Christine's eyes widened as she glanced between them. This wasn't the bright, easy morning banter the viewers expected. Colin inhaled slowly, working hard to maintain his professionalism. "I don't think that's entirely fair," he said calmly. "I've been tied up with filming schedules. It wasn't personal." "Oh, it feels personal," Lorraine replied, leaning back and crossing her arms. "When someone of your caliber repeatedly turns down invitations to a show that's been on the air for decades, it sends a message." "Lorraine, come on," Christine finally interjected. "Let's talk about the film. Colin's here to share something exciting with the viewers." But Lorraine dismissed her with a casual wave. "We'll get to that. I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. You know, Colin, some of us built our careers by being accessible, by connecting with real people. Not everyone can afford to be so selective." Colin's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Lorraine replied bluntly. "I'm saying it outright. Fame comes with a certain arrogance, wouldn't you say? A belief that some shows are beneath you." Ross tried again to redirect. "I think we're getting off track. Colin is one of the most respected actors in the industry, and every interview I'm seen has been gracious." "That's not what I've heard," Lorraine cut in sharply. "Quite a few people have told me Mr. Firth can be rather difficult, demanding even." Colin's face flushed. "That is completely untrue. I don't know who you've spoken to, but those claims are baseless." "Are they? Because I've heard you've walked out of interviews, refused certain topics, made unreasonable demands." "That's a lie. I've never walked out of an interview, and if I refused a question, it was because it was inappropriate."
Christine shifted, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe we should take a quick break." "No, we're not taking a break. This is my show, and for once, we're having a real conversation."
I'm tired of these celebrity interviews where we toss out nothing but softball questions and pretend everything is perfect, Lorraine snapped, leaning forward as if daring Colin to challenge her. People deserve honesty. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being outright disrespectful, Colin replied, his patience clearly fraying. And right now you're crossing that line. Lorraine let out a laugh, sharp, cold, deliberately cutting. I'm crossing a line? That's rich coming from someone who spent her entire career playing posh characters and looking down their nose at everyone else. The audience gasped, the kind of collective inhale that meant the room had shifted from uncomfortable to dangerous. Ross King shrank back, looking as though he desperately wished the sofa cushions would swallow him whole. Christine reached out and placed a gentle hand on Lorraine's arm, an attempt at subtle intervention. Lorraine swatted her hand away. "You don't know anything about me," Colin said, his voice low and steady, his expression tightening. "You've formed opinions based on gossip, hearsay, and your own prejudices." "Prejudices?" Lorraine's voice rose sharply. "I'll tell you what prejudice looks like. It's assuming a morning talk show isn't worthy of your time. It's treating the people who work here, people who get up at 4 in the morning to make this show happen, as if they're second-class citizens in the entertainment world." "I have never treated anyone that way," Colin said firmly. "And frankly, Lorraine, if this is how you treat your guests, I'm not surprised people might hesitate to come on." "Excuse me," Lorraine shot to her feet, eyes blazing. "Are you seriously sitting here on my show insulting me?" "I'm defending myself against your attacks. You brought me here under the pretense of discussing my work, and you've spent the entire interview slinging accusations and personal insults." Ross attempted one last time to intervene. "Let's all just take a breath here. This has gotten out of hand." But Lorraine cut him off, pivoting back to Colin, her anger now fully unleashed. "You know what your problem is, Colin? You think you're better than everyone else. You walk around with that superior attitude, that stuffy British reserve, acting like you're royalty. And you," Colin fired back, his voice finally rising to match hers, "seem to have a massive chip on your shoulder. I don't know what I've done to deserve this treatment, but I won't sit here and be your punching bag because you are having some kind of personal crisis." The words hit Lorraine like a physical blow. Her face turned crimson. For a moment, she stood frozen, stunned into silence. Christine's mouth fell open in disbelief. Ross looked like he might slide right off the sofa from sheer mortification. "A personal crisis?" Lorraine repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "How dare you? How dare I? You've attacked my character since the moment I sat down. You questioned my professionalism, spread rumors you can't prove, and when I defend myself, you act like I'm being unreasonable." "Get out," Lorraine said suddenly. Everything stopped. Christine stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. "Lorraine, you can't be serious." "I'm absolutely serious," Lorraine said, pointing at the exit with a shaking hand. "Get out of my studio. This interview is over." Colin studied her for a long, waited moment. The audience was silent, eerily so. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the implosion. Ross covered his face with both hands. Christine shook her head slowly, horrified. "With pleasure," Colin said at last. He stood, straightened his jacket, and looked directly at Lorraine. "I came here today with nothing but good intentions. I was genuinely looking forward to this. But you've shown your true colors, and frankly, they're not very appealing. Save your speeches. Just go." But Colin wasn't finished. "You talk about connecting with real people, about being accessible, yet today all you've done is prove that you're more interested in manufacturing drama than having a real conversation." He gestured toward Ross and Christine, both visibly miserable. "These two have tried, repeatedly, to save this interview, to steer it back on track. But you were determined to make this ugly from the start, and you succeeded."
"I genuinely hope you figure out whatever it is that's making you so bitter," Colin said, his voice calm but firm, "because this isn't the person viewers have loved for years." Lorraine froze. Her hands trembled visibly, her breath shallow with fury. "I said," she repeated through clenched teeth, "get out!" "I'm going," Colin replied, steady and composed. "But before I do, I want to say something to your audience." Every eye in the studio fixed on him. "You all deserve better than this," Colin said, turning to face the crowd and the cameras. "You deserve a host who respects her guests, who encourages genuine, meaningful conversations, not someone who ambushes people for ratings." A stunned silence washed over the room. Colin turned and began walking toward the edge of the set, his microphone still clipped to his jacket. A crew member hurried over to detach it, but Colin raised his hand. He said, "I'll bring it back." Before stepping off stage, he paused and looked back at Lorraine, still standing, still trembling, but suddenly unsure of herself. He told her quietly, "You had a chance to have a great interview today. We could have talked about the film, about storytelling, about the crafts I love. You chose something else. I hope it was worth it." And with that, Colin FTH walked off the set of The Lorraine Kelly Show. The cameras continued rolling, capturing Lorraine as she stood there completely silent. For perhaps the first time in her long career, she looked like she had no words at all. Christine's eyes were glossy with tears. She blinked quickly, devastated by what had unfolded in front of millions. Ross stared down to the floor, his entire posture deflated. The silence in the studio felt suffocating. Finally, Lorraine sank back in her chair. She seemed smaller now, deflated, shaken, stripped of her usual confidence. She opened her mouth to speak, then shut it again, her throat too tight to push out even a sentence. Christine reached over and gently squeezed her hand, a silent offering of comfort. Lorraine immediately pulled away. We need to go to commercial," she whispered to the producers, barely audible. But the damage was already done. A routine morning interview had transformed in just minutes into a complete catastrophe, one that had been recorded in perfect clarity for the entire world to watch and rewatch. Ross finally found his voice. I think we all need to take a moment here," he said quietly, his voice trembling. "There's nothing to take a moment about," Lorraine snapped back automatically. But her tone was hollow, weak, stripped of conviction. She knew, everyone knew, that this was bad. Really bad. The audience sat frozen. Some were pale with shock. Others looked angry. Angry for Colin. Angry at the treatment he'd received. A few simply stared at Lorraine with confusion and disbelief. Backstage, Colin made his way down the hallway. Crew members watched him pass, their faces full of sympathy, guilt, and shock. A young production assistant mustered the courage to approach him. "Mr. FTH, I'm so sorry about what happened out there." Colin offered her a gentle smile. Even after everything, he was gracious, composed, kind. "It's not your fault," he assured her. "You all do wonderful work. What happened isn't a reflection of any of you." His words only made the contrast between him and Lorraine sharper, more painful. He had just endured a public ambush, and he still cared about the feelings of the crew. Back on set, chaos simmered behind the cameras. Christine leaned close to Lorraine, whispering urgently, trying to help her make sense of what to do next. Ross had gone to speak with the producers, who were all in frantic damage control mode. We're back in 30 seconds, someone called out. Lorraine inhaled shakily. She straightened her posture, fixed her hair, forced what remained of her professional mask back into place. But the cracks showed. Her confidence, usually unshakable, was gone. Christine asked softly, "What are you gonna say?" I don't know," Lorraine whispered. And for the first time, she sounded genuinely frightened. The floor manager began the countdown. 5, 4, 3.
What had just unfolded on live television was far beyond unexpected, and everyone in the studio knew it. Christine's attempt to smooth things over, these things happen in live television, felt hopelessly small compared to the chaos that had erupted minutes before. Ross wasn't about to let the moment be brushed aside so easily. "I think we need to acknowledge that what just happened was, well, it was unprofessional on all sides," he said firmly. Lorraine shot him a sharp warning look, but Ross continued, unwilling to retreat. "Colin FTH is a respected actor. He came here in good faith. Whatever issues were going on behind the scenes, they shouldn't have been thrown at him like that." "Ross," she said, her voice tight with irritation. "No, I'm sorry, but I have to say this," he insisted. "The viewers deserve honesty. That interview went completely off the rails, and it wasn't Colin's fault." Lorraine's face flushed a deep, frustrated red. "I think we can agree to disagree on that." "I don't think we can," Christine said quietly, surprising everyone, including herself. "Lorraine, you know I love you, but what happened out there, the things you said, they weren't okay." For the first time since the confrontation, Lorraine's confidence flickered. She glanced between her two co-hosts and realized slowly and painfully that they weren't supporting her. They weren't even attempting to soften the critique. They were calling her out, gently, yes, but unmistakably. "I was trying to have a real conversation. I'm tired of these fake interviews where celebrities come in, say nothing meaningful, and leave. There's a difference between asking tough questions and launching personal attacks, and what you did crossed that line." A low murmur rippled through the audience. Agreement. Lorraine could feel the shift in the room. It was her show, her studio, her space, and she was losing it all in real time. Meanwhile, down the hall, Colin was quietly packing his things in his dressing room. His phone buzzed non-stop, calls, texts, notifications, but he ignored them. He wanted nothing more than to leave with whatever dignity he still had. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," he said. One of the makeup artists slipped inside. "I just wanted to say, for what it's worth, we all think you handled everything brilliantly, and we're really sorry about how Lorraine treated you." "Thank you. That means a lot." "She's not usually like that. I don't know what got into her." "I don't do ID. I honestly don't know what I did to provoke that kind of reaction." "You didn't do anything," she said firmly. "That was all on her." Back on set, the show limped toward its end. Lorraine tried moving on to other segments, but the energy was hopelessly off. The audience wasn't listening. Christine and Ross went through the motions, their enthusiasm drained. Every few minutes, Lorraine tried to justify herself. "Celebrities need to be held accountable. We can't let people come in here acting superior." But each attempt only deepened the hole she dug. Her co-hosts no longer tried to rescue her. The audience had gone cold. Even the crew looked like they just wanted the day to be over. By the time the show wrapped, Colin had already slipped out a side exit, avoiding the swarm of cameras outside.
News of the disastrous interview had spread like wildfire. Social media erupted. Clips of the confrontation were already being shared thousands of times. The collective verdict was brutally clear. Colin had been ambushed, had handled himself with grace, and Lorraine Kelly had revealed a side of herself that viewers never wanted to see. When the cameras finally cut, Lorraine stood abruptly and walked off without a word. Christine stayed frozen in her seat, shaken. Ross gathered his notes, shaking his head. "That was the worst thing I've ever been part of," Christine whispered. "Same here," Ross said, "and I've been in this business a long time." Around them, the audience filed out, buzzing, whispering, already replaying the moment that would dominate headlines by evening.
Staff members clustered in small, tense groups throughout the hallway, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. No one wanted to speak too loudly, as if raising their voice might somehow make the situation even more real. Everyone understood they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years. Not because it was groundbreaking journalism or gripping television, but because it was a complete, undeniable disaster. Back in her dressing room, Lorraine sat alone, staring at her reflection in the illuminated mirror. The makeup that had looked flawless at the beginning of the show was now smudged around her eyes. Her expression had lost all its usual brightness. Instead, she looked drained, shaken, and utterly defeated. She barely recognized herself. The bubbly morning host that millions turned in to watch every day seemed to have evaporated, replaced by someone brittle and exhausted. Her phone vibrated on the table. The producer's name flashed across the screen. Lorraine didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Finally, she switched the phone off entirely. What was she supposed to say? How could she explain what had driven her to verbally attack Colin FDH so aggressively, so publicly? She had allowed a passing irritation, some perceived slight, real or imagined, to ignite into a full confrontation, and now the world had seen it. The confident Ulan who had stood on set moments earlier was gone, replaced by someone who was only now beginning to grasp the magnitude of what she'd done. The mask had slipped, and what lay beneath was not flattering. Meanwhile, Colin was already halfway home, seated in the back of a car while the grey London scenery slid past the window. Surprisingly, he felt calm. He knew he had done nothing wrong. He had been ambushed, attacked, for reasons he didn't understand, and yet he had responded with restraint. He had defended himself, yes, but without venom, without cruelty, without losing control. Lorraine's accusations, her bitterness, her inexplicable anger, they weren't about him. Whatever she was battling had been simmering long before he walked through the studio doors. He had simply become the easiest target. His phone buzzed with another message. This one, from his agent, contained only 3 words. "You handled that perfectly." And he had. Faced with hostility, he had remained composed, articulate, and rooted in dignity. He had confronted unacceptable behavior without mirroring it. When he walked off that stage, he did it with his head held high. The same could not be said for Lorraine Kelly. She had allowed her worst impulses to take over, and she had done it live, in front of an audience of millions. The warm, friendly persona she had built over decades was overshadowed in a matter of minutes by a spiteful outburst that viewers would not soon forget. As the day went on, the story spread across social media and news outlets. The narrative was consistent everywhere it appeared. Colin FDH had been blindsided and disrespected, yet handled the impossible moment with remarkable grace. Lorraine Kelly, for reasons no one could quite pinpoint, had sabotaged her own show and her own reputation. It had been scheduled as a simple, easy morning interview, something pleasant, routine, the kind of segment that viewers forget within hours.
Instead, it became the moment Colin FTH was effectively pushed off Lorraine's show, not because he had misbehaved or offended anyone, but because the host had lost control of her own demons. When Colin walked off the set, he wasn't just escaping a hostile environment. He was demonstrating exactly how one should respond when treated with contempt, with honesty, with dignity, and the quiet steadiness of someone who knows their own worth. The contrast between them could not have been sharper. On one side stood a respected actor, maintaining his composure under fire. On the other, a talk show host unraveling on live television, attacking her guest and alienating everyone around her. It had taken only 43 seconds for the first barbed comment to land, but the fallout, the damage to reputations, relationships, and trust would linger far longer. Everyone had seen it unfold. The moment when Lorraine Kelly stopped being the cheerful host and revealed something darker beneath the surface. And in the same breath, Colin FTH revealed precisely who he was. The difference between them could not have been clearer.